Okay, here we are, chapter 2.5, solving equations using multiplication and division. I accidentally pushed this button, and so that's going to pop up here in a second, and then I'm going to have to shut it back down. Maybe not. Let's look at example 1. X divided by 3 equals negative 6, and that looks like this. It looks like a fraction. I said x divided by 3, but you have to remember that a fraction and a division sign are equal. They are the same thing. And I keep saying that, so I hope you're understanding how important that is. This is the same as x divided by 3. It's the same, it's equal to x over 3. Just like 1/2 is the same as 1 divided by 2. And of course 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, because 0.5 is the same as half, because it's 5/10, which is half. Okay, that was just like a little review. This is x divided by 3 is equal to negative 6. And the way we solve a division problem is by doing the opposite function. We multiply by 6. If we have x divided by 3 times 3, well, 3 times 3 and then divided by 3 times 3, that just leaves us x. Say we had 15 divided by, not times. Instead of x, we have 15 divided by 3, which is 5, times 3, which is 15. So we get 15 by itself by doing the opposite function. And we get x by itself by doing the opposite function. Hopefully that makes sense too. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. And since we're kind of using fractions, we write it as 3 over 1. Now your books just writes it as 3, but I'm hoping that you guys understand what's happening here. 3 over 3 is like 1. That's like saying 3 over 3, or 3 divided by 3 times x. That's 1x equals negative 6 times 3 over 1, which is the same as just negative 6 times 1. We don't actually have to have, or negative 6 times 3, you don't actually have to have that over 1. It's like times. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. These cancel out, and I'm left with x is equal to negative 6 times 3, which becomes a negative 18. Okay. The second example starts with 18 is equal to a negative 4y. Okay, so this means negative 4 times y. It means negative 4 y times I don't want to do that, times y. So it's negative 4 y's. Whatever y happens to be, you take it negative 4 times, or you take it 4 times and then it becomes negative. It's like y times y, not y times y. My brain is a little bit off. It's like y plus y, plus y, plus y, because there's 4 of them. But all of them become negative because there's a negative sign here. Hopefully that makes sense. So what we do, we want to get y by itself. That's always what we want to do. The opposite of 4 times y is going to be divided by. And we have to, if we're going to multiply, then we want to divide to undo something. We use that fraction thing again. Now remember, we're wanting y by itself, so we're going to divide by negative 4. And we have to do the same thing to both sides, just like we've been doing. Now in the same way, this becomes negative 1. And 18 divided by 4, that doesn't work quite so well. 4 goes into 18 4 times. So that would be 4 and 2/4 left over. Remember, we have to keep the negative sign. Yeah, that's what is y. That's what y is equal to. But 4 and 1/2, or 4 and 2/4 is really the same as 4 and 1/2. And 4 and 1/2. The book decided, ooh, I don't want yellow. It's too hard to see. I thought I got orange. We can see orange. 4 and 1/2, like we said on the other page, is the same as 4.5. And that's one of those things you kind of just have to know. And you never know if the book is going to ask you to do it in a fraction or a decimal. Sometimes you have to do it as both. Algebra, usually we leave the fraction. So I'm fine with 4 and 1/2. or y is equal to negative 4 and 1/2 might be a better way to put it. The book in this case decided to go 4.5. Typically, we usually leave it in fraction form when we're doing algebra. Okay, that's example number 2. Let's see if there's some other examples. Using a reciprocal. Remember what a reciprocal is? A reciprocal are two numbers that multiply together to equal 1. So a lot of times we use fractions. 1/2 multiplied by 2 ones is equal to 2 over 2, which is 1. See, 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 1 is 2, and 2/2 is equal to 1. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. So whenever we want to get rid of a fraction, we can multiply by the reciprocal. Say I have 3/4, and I want to get rid of that. Well, I multiply by 4/3, and I get 12/12, which is equal to 1. Oh, I forgot my equal sign. Okay, kind of cool. Reciprocals are awesome. They're very powerful tools, and we're going to just keep using them. So this example is negative 4/5 x, which means 4/5 times x, negative, is equal to a negative 8. Let me show you a little trick. My algebra teacher showed me this. Your book's not doing this, but we're going to just multiply by a negative 1 on both sides. Remember, whatever we do to one side, we can do to the other side. And when I multiply a negative 1 times 4/5 times negative 4/5, I get positive 4/5. I don't always like negative numbers. And negative 8 times negative 1 is positive 8. And since they were both negative, if I multiply by a negative 1 on both sides, they both are positive. And we still find out what x is. So we don't really have to worry too much when we do something like that. Now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, which happens to be 5/4. 5/4 times 4/5 is equal to 1, and 8 ones times 5/4. Remember, I have to do this on both sides. Okay, now these just cancel out. 5/5 is 1 and 4/4 is 1, or I could go multiply them together and get 20/20 and realize that's 1. Either way, I get 1, and it leaves me x all by itself. And here I have 8 times 5/4, and I could multiply that to get 40/4 and simplify that down to 10. Okay, 8 times 5 is 40, over 1 times 4 is 4, and simplify that down to 10. Or I could do what's called simplify before you multiply. Simplify before you multiply, or simplify first. I like to simplify before you multiply because it rhymes. So I look at this 8 ones times 5/4, and I recognize that 8 over 4 is the same as 2 over 1. And I go ahead and I just turn it into that. 2 times 5 is 10, and 1 times 1 is 1, and I still get 10. But I did it simplifying before I multiply, and it's actually easier. It's better. It's simpler. You simplify first, then you multiply. And I know that some of you guys don't like that, but guaranteed this is going to work better if you simplify before you multiply. So x is equal to 10. Okay? Very cool. That's it. There was some things that you needed to know. We needed to know about reciprocals. We need to know about simplify first, simplify before you multiply. And we needed to know about dividing, and that fractions, division and fractions, are the same thing. Fraction. TIONR equal. Okay, so fractions and division is equal. 1/2 is the same as 1 divided by 2, which is the same as 5/10, which is the same as, I guess I can, 0.5. It could be that you have to look back through this video to remember those things. It will help you. You can shut it off, or you can watch. Let me do a couple more examples. Negative a equals negative 24. Well, this is another example of one of those places where it's really cool to just divide by or multiply by negative 1. when you do that, negative 1 times negative a becomes a, and negative 24 times negative 1 becomes 24, and you're done. Cool enough. Another one, last one. Negative 8/5 b is equal to 5. Now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, this is negative 8/5. The reciprocal of that is going to be negative 5/8. And I could just multiply by a positive 5/8, but then I'd still have a negative number here, and it would be negative b. So when I multiply by negative 5/8, I cancel out my two negatives. Negative times a negative is a positive. My 8's cancel and become 1. My 5's cancel and become 1. So that leaves me with b all by itself. And then I just can, this one I can't simplify first. 5/8, that's 5 over 1. But I can't simplify anything top to bottom. So I just have to go ahead and multiply. 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. 1 times 8 is 8. And 8 goes into 24 3 times. So b is equal to negative 3 and 1/8. And that's a good answer. I like this. It might be that you get a decimal answer. But we'll go with that one. Let's see what the book has. Yeah, negative 3 and 1/8. That's what the book has for an answer, negative 3 and 1/8. And the other one, they decided to go ahead and put it in a decimal. If we want to put this in a decimal, we either have to get out a calculator or do 1 divided by 8, which is 8 into 1. Add 3 zeros. 8 goes into 10. Subtract, get 2. Now we have 20. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract, now we have 4. Bring down that 0. 8 goes into 45 times, so it's 0.125. So negative 3.125 would be the decimal. I think the fraction is better. I like the fraction. Okay. End of video.